Hey everybody, welcome to Automation Tech Talk Lunchtime Edition. Shawn Tierney here from Insights, and today we're going to take a look at something different. We're going to take a look at migrating a MicroLogix program to a Micro800 program, and we're going to do this because I had somebody ask a question about connecting to a Micro800 from a SCADA package, and when I did my VUSE course, I did think every Allen Bradley PLC except for the Micro800. So I thought, this would be a good time to convert my VUSE application that I use to simulate the data for that course. And anybody in my VUSE course can download that in MicroLogix 6500 PLC5, ControlLogix, CompactLogix, multiple versions. And I recently converted it to Siemens because I wanted to add those advanced graphical lessons to my Unified Comfort panel and Unified Basic panel course. So I needed to convert it to Siemens, and then somebody asked me to test their SCADA package with CodeSys, and as you know, I had a couple of vendors step up and send me CodeSys PLCs, so I converted, well, not all of it. There's 5 molding lines. I wanted to do something different than a bottling line or a widget maker, and so I only did 1 molding line into the CodeSys because we've talked about that before. But in any case, needs a little love and tender love and care that the CodeSys IDE does. But in any case, so I figured, hey, let's use this to convert my existing program, which I wrote from scratch, to the Micro800, and let's see how it goes. Now, I did this morning around 4:30. I went through it once, and it seemed to work okay. So I figured we would do this during lunchtime. And so if you guys have any questions on this or anything, let me know. Oh, a couple of housekeeping things. There will be no episode of the show tomorrow. I'm kind of backed up trying to get through a couple of videos that I'm sponsored videos with vendors. And also, I have to just got other stuff to do with the automation school. But I did record this morning an update for any students at the automation school. So now I'm going to schedule that to go out this afternoon because I said September 4th in it. Now looking backwards, I probably should have said September 5th, but in any case, that'll come out this afternoon. And I kind of update a lot of the new lessons over at the automation school. So especially customers in PLC courses, PAC courses over there, you want to check that out. I did have a great conversation with a gentleman who knew what a Cymax 300 was. So we'll try to get him on the Automation Museum podcast, which is, I'm calling the History of Automation. We've recorded 3 already: History of Triconics, History of Wonderware, History of Rockwell PLCs, and these are all from people's perspectives. This isn't like the definitive history, but it's been a lot of fun hanging out with these people who worked with this old stuff, and I really have enjoyed it. Sunday, my goal is to edit those 3 and start scheduling them to release. They'll come out on the regular channels I have now because we haven't even funded the Automation Museum yet. So if you have an extra $1 or 2 this month, please consider going to automationmuseum.org and making a donation. I want to thank everybody who has already donated. Last time I checked, it's been a few weeks, but we were like 7% of our goal. So, I mean, we're there's no rush on this. The old stuff's not going anywhere. So, and I have a lot of people asking if they can send stuff in. I'm asking them to hold on to it in their attics for right now, because I don't. When you get taxed as a business, they want to tax everything that's in your business, right? And so it's hard to explain to them that this is stuff that's for a future museum. So to avoid getting taxed on stuff that I don't use for my business, I'm asking people to hold on to it. Now, if you absolutely have to get rid of it, I do have room in my attic at home, and I'll stick it up there for the meantime. But in any case, you can imagine I hate to lug all that stuff all the way up and then bring it back down later. So in any case, with that said, I do appreciate everybody who sent stuff in. And now I'm going to try something new. I wasn't happy with the way StreamYard, which is the software I use to live stream, I wasn't happy with the way they were doing the graphics. So I'm trying something a little bit different today. And so I'm going to switch over and try it this way. I hope this is better resolution for you. I don't have as much control when I use StreamYard natively. Like I can't crop myself out instead of having the whole studio here. But I'm hoping the graphics are better for you. So here's an example. And I wrote this program. I wanted it to be something that my VUSE students could understand. I didn't want to make like some new algorithm that was like going to win a Nobel Peace Prize or Nobel Prize or anything like that. But in any case, I don't know if it'd be a Peace Prize, but some other prize. But in any case, so it's a very simple program. Basically, I have a bunch of JSRs in the main routine. So many people are used to that. I figured I would just go with that. And because this had to run on a MicroLogix 1000, I put all the simulation in one ladder program. Now, this is the 1400 version. I didn't change it. I just, I did it all in the 1000, tried to cram everything in there. I actually could not fit everything into the 1000, but I came close. So in any case, that's why you'll see the lead numbering here of the files. And I did separate the molding machines here because you only have 15. I think it's 15 and 16 is your debug. So that's why I did it that way. So if you're asking, hey, Shawn, why'd you do it that way? That's why I did it that way. So this is the program we're going to convert to MicroLogix. And to do this, I'm going to first do a file save as, and I'm going to save it as a SLC, a library file. Okay. Even though it's a 1400, we're saving it as an SLC. It doesn't mean Slick 500. It means library file. At one point, it probably meant Slick 500 library container or something. But in any case, now I have found that if you have the free software, right? So if you have the RSLogix MicroStarter Lite, I found that that option is not in there. So you may want to reach out to your local Rockwell rep. And usually they have a real nice guy named the PLC specialist. That's a job I did for 25 years. And they'll do that for you. Look, it just takes some, I mean, we're talking seconds, right? So in any case, usually that's something I would do for my old customers, over morning coffee. So in any case, I'm going to save this. I have a folder, my VOC Basics folder. I downloaded all the files just a few minutes ago. And I'm going to go ahead and export with comments. And I'm just going to leave all the defaults there. And voila, it's all been exported, okay? So now we're ready to switch over to CCW. And in CCW, this utility used to be able to be downloaded separately. As a matter of fact, I put all the links, because I have covered this quite a bit. I put all the links in the description, so you can see all the different links to all the articles and videos I've done on this in the past. But now in Connected Components Workbench, I'm going to go to Tools, MicroLogix to Micro800 Converter, okay? And so, and if you guys can't hear me or you can't see me, let me know in the chat. But in any case, that brings up this little guy here. This is version 5.05. I'm in CCW version 22. It just happened to be what was installed, okay? So in any case, let's go ahead and choose the MicroLogix file. I put it into my, I think it's in Documents, VOC Basics, boom, bada boom, bada boom. I have this checkbox checked because the files match. Okay, there's the files have the same name. I'm going to go to, well, I happen to have here I think I have the L24QBB. Yeah, that's what it looks like. Yeah, so that's what I'm going to use there, just because that's what I have on the workbench. And we're going to do OK. And I want to thank everybody for tuning in. Guys, if you have suggestions on what you would like to see for future episodes, please contact me, throw them in the chat. Also, if you want to come on the show and share a trick that you've learned, I'd love to have you on the show. This is my new lunchtime thing that I do during, why browse the web and, read the bad news when I can share tips with you folks. And this is something I was doing anyway, so I had to do it for I wanted to add those lessons to my VOC course. So figured, why not do this with the audience as well? And so one of the things you're going to notice now, there is a really good, let me go back to full screen here. Did it go back to full screen? You know what? I think that's the other thing is too, with this, you have to select the browser. So one of the things that you'll find the links in the description is that Rockwell has a phenomenally well documented guide to doing this. So I super appreciate, as I was reading through it, and they've done a great job. They updated it over time, and it really does a great job explaining what the differences are. So if you do take on a project to do this, whether it's internal or for somebody else, get that guide, read it cover to cover. It is excellent. And I just really appreciate when a vendor puts that much effort into it. I talked about other vendors where I was trying to look up just how a single instruction worked, and it was so frustrating. But when you're working with people like Rockwell and Siemens and other big companies, they just have great documentation, and it's hard not to have that, right? You want that good documentation. But they have great documentation on this process. And you can see it came in, but we got a lot of errors. Now, I want to look at these errors, and I don't know why. Go to the stop page. How do I see my errors, people? Why is it hiding behind? I'm just going to open up the main program. See if we can get the error list to be on top. There we go. Okay, great. So, and I know a lot of you may be listening while you're driving, so I'll try to go through these. So first of all, no status file, right? There's no status file on the Micro800. Now there is a first pass bit. So we've talked about this a lot lately. And so we don't have to worry about that. It's in there. Like they used to say, what was it, Prego? It's in there. So in any case, we don't have to worry about that. But there is no like status file. So one of the things I would use in the MicroLogix and really all the PLCs is that free running clock to flash different lights on and off. And so because I encapsulated in this program, the program out of my PLC Basics course, it's a subroutine. And so typically we don't use it because but I wanted to put it in there. So if somebody wanted to go in and create a screen and view for the PLC Basics or PLC Basics, they'd have it. But in any case, it also talks about arithmetic status bits are not supported in the 800 as well. You could like have a math overflow or something like that. So you got to be cognizant of that. And then this is revised usage of the timer accumulate value. Now it talks about this thing called an RA-ton MicroLogix user-defined function block. And so I want to get into that. So let's take a break here and let's look at what happened here. So first thing is we have a main program. There is not really a subroutine with the Micro800. You just have all these programs. Think of ControlLogix and just having a bunch of routines that all run at the same time, or a bunch of programs that each have one routine in them. Okay, and that's all they have in them. So yeah, so there's not an exact this to that, but in ControlLogix, let's say you could only create programs and every program had a single routine and every program would always run. That's what you have with the POUs, program organizational units, inside of the CCW and the Micro800. And I think if you had, let's say you had Siemens and you had a bunch of OBs and they were all scheduled to run continuous. So OB1, then OB2, then OB3, and then OB4. I know you can't, some of those numbers you can't use, but you guys get the point, right? So that's what a POU is. All the POUs run. I think you can change their order by reordering them, but they all run, and each POU is really a language. So you can have a POU that's think of a POU, it's like a program and a routine together. Anyways, with all that said, you can see the main POU. This is my jump to subroutines, except instead of jumping to subroutines, it's jumping to user-defined functions. So this is very similar to like a function block in Siemens, right? And I guess you would call it in Logix you kind of look at it as a subroutine, right? As a routine that you have to jump to, a routine other than the main, but it's not in that group. It's in this other list, okay? And so you can see that looks like my original code, except for one big difference, okay? Is that some of the timers, like I don't have my tons, didn't come over as tons. And when I was doing Factory IO, when I was doing the course for, MicroLogix, Micro800, and ControlLogix, it was like, hey, some of these instructions operate differently. Counters and timers, slight little differences. Well, I addressed that by just changing the way I wrote the program for Factory IO. But here, if you have an existing plant, you don't want to have to figure that out. So what Rockwell does here is they create all these user-defined function blocks. They have a countdown function block. They have a copy, a counter function block, right? This one's instruction text. So very simple. They just do that line of text, right? Just checking over there, make sure you guys can see this. So here's one that's called a count up, CTU. Now there is a CTU inside of the Micro800. I wouldn't have wrote all this code to make it work, but they wanted to operate identically to the way it was in the MicroLogix. And so here you go. And so you can see all the code. It took several lines of code, 8 lines of code to make the CTU in the Micro800 act like the one in the MicroLogix. In any case, but some of these, like the lim instruction, This is like, you can just look at this and say, okay, yeah, they did exactly what we were looking for. But when it comes to like the one shot, it's kind of like nothing. It's like, yeah, maybe you should not use the ONS. Maybe you should use the OSR. And there was another one too. It didn't do. Oh, sequencer. The sequencer is just like, yeah, we don't have one. So make your own code up. So in any case, there's two of those in there out of all these instructions it created for me to mirror what was in the Micro800. What was to mirror actually what was in the MicroLogix inside of the Micro800. It created all those new instructions for me. So let's go back to the error list because there's a couple of very other interesting things you guys would probably want to know about. First of all, the only symbols that can converted to aliases, sadly, are for the inputs and outputs. So all my inputs in slot 0 went to the input, the underscore IO, embedded IO, and same thing with the outputs. But those are the only ones who get their symbols brought over. I had symbols on timers and presets and counters, and I had a lot of symbols in there. None of those came in. It's very sad. And we can see here the warning about the time and accumulate value. So, some of the changes there, the status files, these are the two flashing bits I would have to replace, which is not a problem. I got all the bits I can use in the program. You see a lot of information about the timer accumulate value, how it operates differently. Here's the two, the ONS and the SQL that didn't work. And then every place it did find the S115 bit, it did convert it over to the first scan bit. That's good, right? That was really good. There was also, in the one I did this morning, there was also some truncating of my descriptors. Okay, so with the descriptors, they're limited to 255 characters. And so I don't know why this one was different. Maybe I already truncated it, but with the descriptors, if you had a lot of descriptions, comments and whatnot, they would get truncated. And not a big deal, but you got to be aware of that. The good thing is they totally document, in that file. We were looking at that conversion file. In there, they tell you everything that doesn't convert over. So I know at home this morning, I know that all of the comments and descriptions that get truncated, it's totally documented. That's a CSV file that gets saved to your hard drive. And so everything you have to go and fix. But I just thought it was very interesting how to address the slight nuances between the counters and the timers and whatnot, that they create all these, like what you would think of as an add-on instruction in Studio 5000. They create them as user-defined function blocks inside of CCW. And apparently, if it's not on that list, if there's an error, not an error in that list, then you're going to expect the same type of operation. But you'll also see that they warn you that you do have to test it. You cannot assume that everything translated perfectly, right? And some things you got to know is like, what is the speed of the controller? You're going to assume that the Micro800 is faster. Does that cause any issues? You also have to understand about like what's the response time of the I/O, right? So in 90% of the applications, that may not be a big deal, but in some applications, you may start seeing multiple counts where you only saw one, multiple pulses where you only saw one. You may have current limitations on the new inputs and outputs versus the old ones. So a lot of things you got to do one of these conversions. I think the first thing you would typically do is, and they actually have this in IAB. It will convert from one to the other. And that manual I mentioned has even the wiring diagrams from one to the other. They just did a phenomenal job. So that's what I'm working on here. I wanted to share that with you. It's actually pretty user-friendly. But again, don't discount the amount of time you're going to have to do to test the converted code. Same goes when we talked about converting PLC 5 or 6500 to ControlLogix, CompactLogix, or Soft PLC. You always have to test out the code because these people make these importers and exporters. They don't know everything, right? They're not perfect. I will say this though, doing what we just did was so much easier than manually retyping everything into Siemens into CodeSys. So yes, would I do this and then go and debug it? Yeah, I'd much rather do that than to have to manually re-enter all the code. That was a real drag. I'm glad it's done, but it was a real drag. So tools like this, yes, definitely. I know some people are like, no, I'm going to do it everything bit by bit. I'm like, well, go for it. Have fun. But I would rather use something like this. And so in any case, it looks like we're running over 20 minutes. So I want to thank everybody who joined us today. Again, if there's something you would like to see on a future lunchtime show, let me know. I usually, when I'm drinking my coffee first thing in the morning, I'll go over things and try things potentially to do at lunchtime, and be happy to share anything I can with you guys. I do want to show now that I still have to refine this and get it working. Once I do, I will be adding those lessons to both my Micro800 course on how to do this and my VUSC course on how to connect to it. And I probably end up connecting to it 2 different ways, through Links Classic and Links Enterprise. But I didn't get that far this morning. But in any case, there will be a What's New in School this afternoon. There will be no episode of the lunchtime show tomorrow. Don't know if there'll be one Monday, so that's we'll play that one by ear. Just depends on how much work I have left over tonight that I don't get through this weekend. But with that, I just want to thank you all again for tuning in. I want to wish you all good health and happiness. And until next time, my friends, peace.